What do you think is going to replace punk or romantic?
Nothing will ever replace it for us. It never replaced it for me. I never change into anything else when there were new fashions, because everyone, it's more than a fashion, it's a way of life. There's a lot more, punk depends a lot more on what you believe than all the other little fashions do. It's a lot more than just the music. I don't think it'll ever change for us.
Yeah,
Bands like the Subs have been going for 5 years and they're still the same at heart. Why will we change? If we could see another movement, we won't sort of suddenly latch onto it just for the sake of it. There's no point. I mean, you can't suddenly dump one audience and expect to pick up another one.
But I bet you won't be punk in 5 years' time.
But I will. I've been for nearly 5 years now. I'm not going to suddenly change, am I? I couldn't think I could change. I could never change at heart.
I mean, the thing is that we are the punk generation, if you like. So even when we're sort of, when we are 25, 26,
we'll still be in
we're still going to have that bit of punk in us. So, we'll still be able to understand. I mean, like a new youth cult probably will come along, not about a revival, but an actual new youth cult.
Yeah.
When the kids that are 16 then, when we're about 25, are going to start their own movement. It'll be totally different.
Not only that,
we will understand it, but we won't be part of it, because we'll be, this is our generation.
Stumbling through the rubble, my head's in a spin. I hear them fighting the war that no one can win. I'm too young to die, too late to live, as politicians do the thing no God can forgive. Time has come for us to die. No memories left to cry. No chance of a rebirth. For the last rockers on earth. Hit in shots when they drop their bomb. Left us buried in this molten tomb. While we stood in the glow of radiation, they were burning up the whole of creation. Time has come for us to die. No memories left to cry. No chance of a rebirth. For the last rockers on earth. Wandering round humanity. All we ever wanted was to be free. Our music was our only joy. But the government's wanted to search and destroy.
Welcome to another edition of Swearing Session. Today in this video we're going to be discussing the back catalog of Riot City Records. It's going to be pretty much the same, organized the same way as the No Future videos were. I do in the beginning want to actually talk a little bit about the history of Riot City, because I kind of feel like I screwed that up in the No Future videos. I kind of just jumped into it and I didn't really talk about the label itself. There is a great video of an interview with Simon Edwards that I will put a link to in the description, where you can hear him kind of say, the whole backstory behind Riot City and how it got started. So I'm just going to kind of do a very brief overview of how Riot City got started, and this record here kind of illustrates most of that. So it was started, Riot City came about in 1980, and it was started by Simon Edwards, and he wanted to put out some more, I guess you would say, hardcore punk. At the time it was like this, just the blossoming second wave of punk, and he couldn't really get any interest to do that, so he kind of just branched off from the record label that he was working with at the time and started Riot City Records with the band Vice Squad. So Riot City really came out of the label Heartbeat. So that was Simon Edwards' first label, and it ran previous to and a little bit at the same time as Riot City. They did a number of releases around, I think the first one was 1978, and they went up until the early 80s, but this compilation really is the seeds of Riot City. So this came out in October of 1979 on Heartbeat Records. It's a Bristol compilation, It features all Bristol bands, and it's mostly, I'd say, punk adjacent at least. There's some definite punk on here, and then some of it's more like indie kind of, not quite spiky punk, more 77 sounding for the most part. But there's one band on here, you see right there, Vice Squad. Vice Squad would kind of be the reason that Riot City would come about. So on this was actually Vice Squad's debut, and if you have a copy with the poster, so this opens up and it shows all of the pictures of all the bands. So here is the very first pictures of Vice Squad, right there. And there would be some other characters on here that would end up in the Riot City story that we'll talk about. So here's a gentleman named Phil Lovering. He will come into play later on in the Riot City story. So if you know who he is, just be patient. We'll talk about him and his bands later. Probably not in this video, but in the second video. So anyways, back to this. This came out in October of '79. There was only one press of this, and it came with this poster, which is often missing because it's pretty cool. So a lot of people put them up on their wall and forgot about them. So here's the Heartbeat label. And this was the first 12-inch by Heartbeat. They were like Riot City. They focused mainly on singles. Most of their releases were singles. This was actually repressed in 2013 by Radiation. So there is a repress of this if you're interested. But at the time, Heartbeat was working with Cherry Red Records, and they weren't too keen on Vice Squad. Out of this compilation, Simon Edwards really thought that the second, rightfully so, thought Vice Squad and the whole second wave of punk in general was really gonna take off. And Cherry Red was kind of like, I don't know. And you could see this in the interview. He kind of says, I didn't really, we didn't really like this stuff, and we didn't really think it was going anywhere. But Simon Edwards thought differently. So he basically teamed up with Vice Squad, and together they were going to start a label, and Vice Squad was going to find other punk bands, that would either open for them or that they just knew about in general, and they would bring them to Simon, and Simon would put out records. So that was kind of the idea behind Riot City, and that's pretty much how it ended up working. There's a little bit of unseen circumstances surrounding Vice Squad, which we'll get into. But so Simon took this project basically on his own initially, and that is where this comes in. So this is the very first Riot City release. This is the Vice Squad debut 7-inch, and this whole label, Riot City, is a very, very similar story to No Future. So there's a lot of parallels between how they came about and how these records were put out. Even there's some strange just similarities between the two of them, between Vice Squad and Blitz, and whereas Blitz was kind of focused on Manchester area, Vice Squad was definitely a Bristol area. So they kind of had a lot of, I don't know, maybe about half the releases were Bristol area bands, at least. Maybe a little less than half, but a good amount of them were Bristol based. So so this is the first Vice Squad release. This came out in December 1980 to January 1981. There were, unlike the Blitz record, this basically stayed in press. So they just kept pressing this as people kept buying it, and when all was said and done, there was about 20,000 copies of this, from what I was able to see. So the first version of this, or the initial copies of this, actually would come with a poster insert. And I'm not sure how many of these actually are in existence. I've heard about 1,000, so maybe the first 1,000 copies got this. It could be more than that, I'm not sure, or less. It just has a good collage picture of Vice Squad, and then later copies would just come by themselves with nothing. And Riot City would have throughout basically the entirety of Riot City, they would have these injection molded labels, which are just they're just great. I love the labels of Riot City. And you can see here, it actually, I guess he won over Cherry Red because they ended up with a copyright on here. So I guess at the end of the day, he ended up winning them over with helping to put that out. So also, there's another thing I want to mention about all Riot City records, and I see this when a lot of people are putting them on eBay over the years and stuff like that, trying to sell copies of this. All the Riot City releases were made in France. So you can see right there, it says made in France. And I see a lot of people trying to sell these like, oh, rare French version of the, they were all made in France. So most of these, there's only one version of them, and they were pressed in France with that same SNA is the company. So, and that was throughout their whole, basically the whole run of Riot City. I believe they use the same manufacturers for all these records. So just beware, like sometimes you'll see people trying to post them for outrageous prices because it's a rare French edition, which doesn't exist. They were all made in France. So okay, so that was the first one. So number 2 was another Vice Squad release. So this is Riot number 2. Oh yeah, all the catalog numbers begin with Riot. So it's Riot 1, Riot 2, etc. So this is the Resurrection EP. This was their second release. There's only one press of this. There's another. I've seen some people have like promo inserts that came in these. Mine doesn't have anything like that, so. And again, you can see mine's a little screwed up, but those same injection molded labels. And these two Vice Squad releases sold like hotcakes, very similar to the Blitz story. They couldn't keep them on the shelves, and Vice Squad had a distinct advantage in terms of marketing by having a female lead singer. So basically, as soon as the first record came out, major labels were after them big time because they're like, oh, we could put her on everything and we can sell a lot of records and get a lot of publicity from this. So that's basically what ended up happening. And after this release, Vice Squad was poached off of Simon and Riot City by EMI, and Simon Edwards was pissed because this whole operation was kind of based on Vice Squad and Simon joining forces. And so after this, their first album and single would come out, and they would be on EMI. So these two records are on EMI, and if you look on these EMI releases, they all say Riot City still, but these had nothing to do with Riot City. If you look at the catalog numbers, they're all the Zonophone EMI catalog numbers. So these are the first two records that came out on EMI. And this was, I believe, this one was February of '82, and this one was October of '81. So they basically immediately went to a major label, which was kind of controversial at the time. They took a lot of flack for going to a major label, but I mean, Angelic Upstarts, Cockney Rejects were already on EMI, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Maybe because they were a younger band, that's why they kind of got a little more shit than those other bands for being on a major label. Vice Squad themselves ended up hating this record, and if you look at or you read any retrospective stuff about this, they say that they really should have done the first album on Riot City because EMI just kind of neutered their sound a little bit. I mean, I think it's a great record, but the earlier EPs are definitely better than these EMI in terms of production. They kind of just, the power's kind of drained out of them, which they would correct later on as they kept going on EMI. But I tend to agree that it's not what it could have been in terms of a debut. But yeah, so that is the story with Vice Squad. There is technically one more Vice Squad release that was on Riot City, and this was this 12-inch, which is the third Riot City release. The catalog number is Riot 1/2, Riot a half, because it's basically the first two EPs pressed on a 12-inch. And this is a pretty cool record. I really like this. It's on a 12-inch 45, so it sounds awesome. And it's got the first two EPs on it. It's got all the lyrics, which you didn't get on the EPs themselves. Great colorful sleeve. It's basically a giant 7-inch sleeve. It opens on the top. Yeah, this is a cool record to have. And again, it's, see, made in France. It's like all of them. So this record came out actually after they were on EMI, and I believe they kind of smoothed it over, and I'm not sure if Simon continued to manage them, but he was definitely still involved with Vice Squad in some capacity, and Vice Squad was still involved in Riot City. So basically how Riot City worked at this time was Shane and Dave. So Dave and Shane were the guitarist and drummer. They were kind of the scouts for Riot City, and they would bring Simon bands that they thought were good enough to be on the label. And that's pretty much how this label continued to operate. So they kind of made amends for leaving the label themselves. And yeah, I think Simon would continue to tour. Like, he would go on tours with them and run their merch table and stuff. And he actually, it's funny, I read he took this picture of them, which is an outstanding picture. And I guess the stage security didn't realize who he was or why he was there. So they, like, as soon as he took this picture, they like tried to kick him out for being on the stage, which is pretty funny. Yeah, so yeah, cover photograph taken by Simon Edwards. I think that's in Burning Britain. He talks about that. So yeah, there's only one press of this, but there are one UK press, but they did press this in New Zealand as well on Music World, who did a lot of the No Future stuff too. So that's kind of cool. Again, there's a lot of crossover between Riot City and No Future in terms of like how they actually ended up operating. So I should probably just do a whole video on Vice Squad, but I'll just quickly wrap up into what happened with Vice Squad. So Vice Squad, while they were on EMI, they ended up doing a couple more singles and another album, which was I would say is a much better album in all ways than the first one. And after that album, Vice Squad would split up. So this is the last Vice Squad release that was featuring Becky Bondage. This is the State of the Nation EP. This is outstanding. I love this record. But this was on EMI. And then at that point, Vice Squad split up because Becky wanted to do more animal rights stuff. And there's lots of interviews with her. You can see, what really her opinions were. But she felt like she was being kind of cornered by the band. Like, she wanted to do more stuff. And the band kind of wanted to stay what they had been doing. So they parted ways, and Vice Squad got a different singer, Leah. And Becky went off to do her own solo career. So she did this band, which is Ligatage. And this band was actually kind of a super group. So this had Steve Roberts from Cyanide, and he also played in UK Subs, and he was basically like a punk session drummer. He played on a lot of stuff. He played on The Exploited. I think he played on like half the Troops of Tomorrow album. And then it also had, I think, the bass player from Chelsea. So there was a lot of punk history in this band. And I wouldn't even say this is really punk. I think it's like punk adjacent, but it's very just 80s kind of pop. Like they were really, and I should say, as soon as Becky left Vice Squad, EMI canned Vice Squad, and they kept Becky. So that really shows you what their intentions were with the band. They couldn't care less what band she was in. They just wanted her on the label. So Vice Squad actually went off to Anagram Records, which is where One Way System was, and they did more punk too. They did like the later Punk and Disorderlies. I think 2 and 3, I believe, Anagram did. So Vice Squad went over there and they had a different singer, Leah. And I actually really like this record, this Look at This record. I think they did an album too. This is just a 12-inch single, so there's only 3 songs on this. But I like this. It's definitely not punk. The Vice Squad stuff stayed much more punk related. And, you know, when I was young, I was like, oh, Vice Squad's only Becky Bondage. And then I actually listened to the stuff with Leah, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. So in terms of the Vice Squad stuff, like other ways to get this, there's this, which is Vice Squad, the single. So this includes all the Riot City stuff and the EMI singles. Only with Becky though, none of the stuff with Leah's on here. So this is all, and this is just a copy of the first single insert. It's just kind of rearranged a little bit, and then on the back it has just a little history of by Becky, and she talks about some of the stuff that we just discussed. So this is a classic. This came out in, I think, the early 90s this came out, so like this is all over the place. You can find this pretty cheap. This is on Abstract Records. This is a classic record to have. Also more recently there was CDs that came out, the Riot City years, and the Riot City years has actually been put on vinyl twice, and I want to talk about these because they're a little fucky. So this one is the first one that came out, I don't know, 2017, 2015, I don't know, something like that. This record is basically everything that was actually on Riot City. The first 2 7-inches. It also has the 2 songs that were on the Riot Assembly compilation, and then it has the first EP that came out on EMI. It has the demos that they did of those songs. So Out of Reach, Sterile, and So What for the 80s were the Out of Reach EP, but these are different versions of that. And then for some reason on this version they added the 3 songs, or 3 songs that would be the Sex AIDS 7-inch, which we're going to talk about later in this video. I don't know why they put that on here. Technically, that band included members of Vice Squad, and we'll talk all about that later on, but I don't know why it's on the Vice Squad Riot City years. I have no idea. And plus, that's a picture of Vice Squad with Leah singing. So I don't, this is like, the cover's great. I mean, I love this picture, but I don't know why they included that picture on the back. It's like, damn guys, come on. So this one, I mean, it sounds great, and this one you could see, you find all over the place. It's very common, so that's a good way to have. It's just a weird choice of tracks to put on there. This one I think is much better. So this is the same idea, but they actually took off the Sex Aid songs because it's not really relevant to this, and they give you all the lyrics inside. So that's pretty cool. If I had to choose between the 2 of them, I'd choose this one. You know, you get a good gatefold. It's got the same picture from that 12-inch, and it's on yellow, which if you're into colored records, which I am not, I prefer black. But if you're into that, there's also that. I feel like it should be orange, because everything on this is orange. I don't know. See, I just complain about, I hate colored vinyl. It's not my thing. So, and that's pretty much wraps up, as much as this was a Vice Squad label, that's pretty much the end of Vice Squad in terms of Riot City Records. So we'll end on that note, and maybe we'll continue on. So the first band that Shane and Dave pulled in and suggested for Riot City was this band, The Insane. And this is another band which you might remember from the No Future video. So this is the only band that was on both Riot City and No Future. This is actually their first record. The Riot City, or the No Future 7-inch, is their second record. So this record includes also David Ellesmere, who would play in Discharge, and we talked about him in the other video. But this is a great record, and I just feel like this band is kind of forgotten about. There was only 1 press of this. It was repressed by Mad Butcher more recently. So as far as The Insane goes, there's no, this would be their only Riot City release, and there's no, see here's again, This actually had a very unique label compared to the rest of the releases. There was no other band that kind of got their own label on Riot City. But there's no collection of this band, like all of their singles and stuff. And when I mentioned that in the other video, I had a couple friends of mine be like, "Whoa, you're forgetting about this 12-inch with the demo." This isn't really collection. It has some songs, but it's nothing in. It's nothing complete. So this is it's a demo, and then it just pulls a couple songs off their various 7-inches. So this doesn't have everything, although it does come with this, which is a reproduction of the Rising Free fanzine about No Future. So I probably should have put this in the No Future video. And yeah, but this is cool to have. I guess this demo probably would have been the one that they sent to, or the one that Dave and Shane maybe gave to Simon at Riot City. So I guess it's relevant to this video. It's also on blue vinyl again. I couldn't care less, but if you're into that, you're into that. At least this one matches, right? Satisfies my autism at least. Okay, so that's the Insane. Okay, so after the Insane, we have another. This would kind of become, after Vice Squad left, this band would kind of become their flagship act. So this is Abrasive Wheels, and this is Riot number 4. This came out in February 1982. There was only this one press, but it was reissued in the 90s by Visionary Vinyl. They did and those Visionary represses, there's a couple of these Riot Cities that were done by Visionary in the 90s, and they look very similar. So just kind of got to be careful if you're looking for an original. They're not trying to fool you, but they look old because they really weren't pressed much longer after the originals. So they just kind of have that old feel to them. So that's so this band was from Leeds, and they had actually done one record before this. So this is their debut, and this came out in March of 1981. So this really came out right around the time of the first Vice Squad record, a couple months after. And this was self-financed by them. There's a couple different versions of this. There's something to do with the publishing. So some of them say Cherry Red, and some of them don't say anything. I think they just say copyright control or something like that. So I think this was maybe done a little bit after, maybe when they were first picked up by Riot City, or just prior to them, because Cherry Red was kind of like the mothership behind Riot City a little bit. So I think the versions without Cherry Red are probably the first one, but I'm not really sure. There's, I think, 4 different versions, and the only difference is these copyright notes here at the bottom. So that's their debut, and then this was the one that came out a little bit after. All right, so next we have one of my favorites on the label. So this band is, they were a Bristol band. This is a Court Martial. They were from Bristol, and this was another band I believe that Dave and Shane from Vice Squad brought to the attention of Simon. This band was very, very young, so these guys were like early teenagers. I think the drummer was, yeah, these guys were really young. I think the drummer was, I think they said he was 12 when this band started. I don't know, but yeah, this band is really good. This was the only version of this. This was never repressed for some reason in its original single form. Again, you can see these injection molded labels. Yeah, there was only one press of this. Yeah, this band, their entire existence was on Riot City Records. So yeah, that's definitely a Bristol band right there. Okay, so next we have, this is an absolute classic of the genre. This is Chaos UK Burning Britain EP. So there's this one original press. This came out in March of 1982, and this is like kind of the beginning of what Riot City would be known for throughout their career. This is like hardcore punk. This is Discharged, That Direction, Disorder, Noise Not Music. You know, you can just tell by the cover like what this sounds like if you've never heard it. But again, similar injection molded labels there. Yeah, this is just an absolute classic. And this was a band that Simon Edwards signed on his own. And just the sound of this, the aesthetic of this really put a thorn in Vice Squad's side, because Vice Squad was much more 77 kind of musical, and this was just like a racket. And they really, and we'll talk about kind of what this band caused, and it's actually pretty awesome and funny. But this was kind of what the direction that Riot City would go kind of going forward. Like Abrasive Wheels were kind of more poppy too, like they kind of had that sound and sang it the same way, where it was definitely punk, but it was, you know, it had a tune to it. This was just like noise. So if you're into that and you don't know what this is, you should probably just stop even watching this video and go listen to that. So we'll just leave it at that, and we'll continue on in the catalog numbers, and then this band will come back both in releases and just in the story in general. Okay, so after Chaos UK, we're going to talk about the Undead. So the Undead, again, Riot City and No Future, they had this kind of weird, they were doing almost the same thing at the same time in different places, but they really mirrored each other in many ways. So on No Future, they had the Screaming Dead, who were kind of the, I don't want to say goth, but they were that dark punk direction. And Riot City had the Undead. So the Undead is definitely, I'd say they're more punk and less gothy than Screaming Dead were, but they were definitely that direction compared to Chaos UK or Abrasive Wheels or any of the other stuff. Yeah, so they both had one band that was kind of like that. They both had Dead in the name. It's just kind of funny how that works out. So this one is on a blue injection molded label, and going forward you'd see a lot of this blue, color on the label. So this band, and again, like Screaming Dead, very underrated. This is a great record, and I love all their records that they did on Riot City. We never really hear much about them for whatever reason. Even back then, they didn't really sell that well for some reason. I mean, I think it really, I guess it doesn't fit exactly in, but it's pretty close. At least more close than Screaming Dead was. But this is underrated, and these are very common in the United States. I see these all the time, so I don't know why this was. Maybe they just sent a whole box of these over here. I don't know back then, but I see this and the other Undead single we're going to talk about later. I see them all the time. And these are kind of known as the most common Riot City releases. So if you see this, don't sleep on it. But this isn't the Bobby Dead Unsteel, or the Bobby Steele Undead from New York, who had a very similar kind of shtick and similar logo and everything, so that also gets confusing. But these guys are from Bristol. Okay, so this was Riot number 7, and this was April of 1982. Okay, so Riot number 8. So this is a funny record here, and I guess since Vice Squad left Riot City needed to find another Vice Squad, and this was kind of like the next best thing. This is like the Vice Squad you have at home, I guess. Female vocalist. I'm kind of making fun of it, but I love this record and I love this band. So this came out in April 1982, and this was another one of those records I was on Riot City, which I believe sold tens of thousands of copies. Like, this thing just took off too, and yeah, this was in the charts for a while. Like, if you look up the singles charts at the time, this was like near the top in a lot of them. So these guys were from Leeds, I believe. Could be wrong. I know that this band, well, the bass player Macca, he would be involved in the band, the Underdogs, who we're going to talk about later in this video. But you could see they thank basically all of Vice Squad in the beginning of this. Yeah, this is very Vice Squad-ish. And again, this is on the, see the blue metallic injection molded labels here. Yeah, this is definitely a great record. There was only one press of this back in the day, but Mad Butcher put this out more recently. They did a repress of this, I think, I don't know, 5 years ago or so. So yeah, that's a great one. So that is Riot number 8. Riot number 9 is another Abrasive Wheels, and you might be thinking, well, hang on, we already looked at this. Well, Riot City was so keen for more Abrasive Wheels, rather than wait for Abrasive Wheels to come out with some new stuff, they just reissued that first 7-inch. I mean, the first 7-inch is so good. But there's slight differences between both of those. So I'll pull the original back out and I'll just show you the way to tell the difference. Right off the bat, there's this, I believe that is Shona, lead singer of Abrasive Wheels. I'm not sure, but there's that picture there. That's a quick way to tell at a glance on the front. So the Riot City version came on two different, there's a couple differences. Like you see, they Thanks to All Punks and Skins pretty much covers their entire original thanks list here. But the Riot City version of this came on both black vinyl and red vinyl, and yeah, as I prefer, I have the black one. The red one I think is more common. I don't know. They're both pretty common. They're not hard to find at all. They're not expensive, but this label, this would kind of be the most popular form. They would do this font for Riot City going forward. Some of them still had the older style, but a lot of the ones going forward would have that new updated label, either in silver or blue. So yeah, that is Riot number 9. And that was also April of 1982. So yeah. That's another classic. So, in June of 1982, they didn't put out any singles, but they did put out this. And this is their first, technically LP. It's a compilation, Riot Assembly. We're not really going to jump too deep into this in this video. This is going to be in the next video with the albums. But this is related to the next release, and it's also related to the whole Chaos UK situation with Vice Squad. So I wanted to put it in here because it kind of is a good way to start talking about that. So this came out obviously after Vice Squad had already left the label. So there's 2 Vice Squad songs on here that were done before Vice Squad left, and then a lot of these other bands are bands that we had already just talked about or we will talk about in a minute. So, you know, Expelled, Court Martial, Abrasive Wheels. But at the end here, there's a band called Chaotic Discord. That is right here. And take a note of the spelling because that's going to come into play in this next release. So, with Chaotic Discord, they would be number 10. So this was July of 1982. And Chaotic Discord actually was not a real band. So when Simon Edwards signed and put out the Chaos UK EP, Shane and Dave were like, why are you putting out this crap? Like, any idiot could be in a band that sounds like this. This isn't anything special, like you're wasting wax putting this out. And Simon was like, I like it, you know, I don't know what your guys' problem is. And they basically told him, they're like, listen, we could make a record like this in literally a day and you would put it out. And he was like, you're full of shit. So that's what Vice Squad did. They got 2 of their roadies and they made a band called Chaotic Discord, and they made this up. And it's like Chaos UK. It's just noise, and it's pretty much just making fun of Chaos UK. And they nail it. It sounds exactly like something that Chaotic Discord would have done. And he totally fell for it. And the first thing he actually put on there was the song Glue Accident, which is on here. And I think this song and the 3 songs that are on here, I think all 4 of those songs were recorded at the same time in like a very short amount of time. And they sent it to, I think they said that they got this demo off of a band that was so into anarchy that they didn't want to even talk to a label. So they gave the demo to Vice Squad to give to Simon. I mean, that's very, like, you could see any punk band saying some ridiculous shit like that. So he totally fell for it and ended up putting this record out. So in terms of the actual pressings of this is the first press of it. There was a number of variations. I don't think they were different pressings. I think they were just slight variations. There's some with silver labels, there's some with blue labels, but I do think the very first version is this one with the misspelling of Chaotic Discord. This is actually how the band originally spelled it. And going forward, Simon Edwards, I guess he spelled it with the C. So going forward, it was always with the C, and most of the other labels have it updated here with the C, but this matches the way that it was on here with the K. So I'm pretty sure that this version would be the very first version. I don't know, but that's just me guessing. So yeah, that is Riot number 10, and that is July of 1982. And that's the story with Chaotic Discord. And we're gonna talk more about Chaotic Discord and Chaos UK going forward, but that's basically the gist of what this was and how it came to be. And also, this I will put away because we're already burning daylight here, so we'll talk about this record in the next video, more in depth. Okay, so number 11, we are back to Court Martial. So this would be Court Martial's final release of the 80s. This was July 1982, and again, like the first one, there was no repress of this. This is the only pressing of it. And you can see there's a better picture of them and just how young they look. But I love this record. This is probably my favorite record of theirs if I had to pick between the two of them. And again, the blue injection molded labels. So this was the final Court Martial release of the 1980s and ever. They never reformed or anything like a lot of UK82 bands did, but they kind of were like a cult classic UK82 band, I guess. There was a collection that was done by Vomito Punk, so we talked about them in the No Future video. They do a lot of UK82 demos, singles collections. This is pretty awesome to have. So this has all the demos that they did. I think there's 2 demos on here. There's their 2 singles, and it comes with the whole booklet with the history behind the band and their recordings and some pictures and flyers and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, and there's a couple different versions of this. I think there's 300 copies of this, and there's I believe there's 300. There's something else in there. I don't know what that is. Oh, it's just I didn't even know that was in there. So there was 100 black, I believe, 100 black, 100 clear, and 100 orange. And I think this was the orange one. Yeah, this is the orange one. So this is kind of limited, as were most of the Vomito stuff. They didn't do many pressings of it because it's really a very niche genre. But this was actually reissued in 2023 by Radiation, but they took one song off. So the song Your War, on this one there's 3 versions of it. There's the first demo, the second demo, and the version that was on Riot Assembly. And I believe it's the same as one that's on the demo, but the demo version's unmixed. So really they put the same song on here twice, and the repress takes one version off. I forget which. So you really, that one you can find much more easy than this one, and you're really not missing anything. But my autism won't allow me to own that one because I need every single version. I need to hear the same song twice from the same recording, only mixed slightly different. Because don't be like me, guys. Okay, it's okay, but it's not okay. All right, so Riot number 12. We are back to Vice Squad's favorite band, Chaos UK. This was July of 1982. This was, I think this might be the band's finest hour. It's tough to choose between this one and the other one. So this has the song No Security, which was made famous in the UKDK documentary. And it has the best intro ever. It's just the singer just like he's just screaming. I love it. It's just you see like there's just a dichotomy between the type of bands, between Vice Squad and Abrasive Wheels and bands like this and Disorder. So again, the same injection molded, the blue. This was there's one original press of this. The artwork's actually stolen from a fanzine, which I believe this is Pusshead artwork that they just kind of cropped out and stole, which was very common at the time. Not just to steal Pusshead artwork like the Exploited did notoriously, but just cutting out little pieces of fanzines and using images and all that stuff. I mean, there was no copyright control back then. So that was, this is technically the last Chaos UK release of new material on Riot City, but there would be more Chaos UK. So this isn't technically the last, but it's the last of new music. So, right, number 13, this is one of my favorites. So this is the Mayhem Gentle Murder EP. Mayhem actually would share members at times with the band Blitzkrieg that was on No Future. I'm not sure which members they were, but they shared members with Blitzkrieg. So there was one original press of this. It was reissued by Bomb All Records more recently, in 2020 sometime. Yeah, this is a great, and I believe half of this band actually would roadie for Dead Kennedys when Dead Kennedys played in the UK, and they thank Dead Kennedys on here too. But this record's great, and I love this. For external use only, keep away from children. So definitely not without a sense of humor. And here we could see the Riot City label that is kind of infamous. The injection molded labels again. This record is very underrated. I wore out a shirt of this big time when I was younger. I used to wear it, I think, every single day. And this is not the Metal Mayhem, which I would always, some metalhead be like, oh, you like Mayhem? And I'm like, yeah, but not the Mayhem you're talking about. And then they'd be all grumpy, but sorry, this one's better than the other one. Okay, so that is number 13. Number 14 is one of my favorite bands of all time. This is the Ejected, and this is their debut. This would be the band that was on Riot City that was definitely more towards the oi side. A lot of the other stuff like Mayhem, Court Martial, you know, it's much more abrasive, hardcore punk. This is definitely more towards the oi side of things. And this was between August and September this was released. I've seen conflicting data on that. So August, September 1982. So these guys were actually, their debut was on the Carry On Oi compilation, which Gary Bushell did. That was their, I think they had 2 songs on that, and it was through that, I believe, that they got the deal to be on Riot City. So here's the, again, legendary Riot City labels. Yeah. So this band, actually, they had been around in a different form before this. So before the Ejected was the Ejected, they were a band called Dawn Patrol. And Dawn Patrol actually did one 12-inch. There's no members of the Ejected on this Dawn Patrol record because Jim, the guitar player and singer of Ejected, he was dating Dawn, the singer of Dawn Patrol, which, I mean, guys, come on, it's an age-old thing. Don't be in a band with someone you're in a relationship with. Just, it never works. But I'm just kidding. Do what you want. But this band, so obviously they broke up, and he took the bass player of Dawn Patrol with him to start the Ejected, and Dawn Patrol continued on, and they did this 12-inch without him. And I don't think any of these songs on here were, I believe the early Dawn Patrol songs became Ejected songs, and they wrote new music by themselves. I'm not sure, but this Dawn Patrol record is technically related to the Ejected. This was their only release of the 80s, was this. And sort of related to Riot City is this record was also manufactured in France by that same SNA, and their LP sleeves, when they are new, they look absolutely outstanding. But if these are exposed to any sort of UV light or anything, I don't know if you can see here, this lamination starts to peel off. And this, I need to get a better copy of this, because every time you take this in and out of a sleeve, a little piece of this flakes off. And Riot City LPs are exactly the same way, because they are made in the same, or they were made by the same company as this. So just wanted to mention that. The 7-inches are fine because they're just a paper, but the LP sleeves, they have that weird lamination. And it's just, it really hurts my autism. No bueno. Okay, so that is the ejected. See? Look at that. I took it out. There's a piece of it. Pain in the ass. Alright, so that is the ejected Dawn Patrol. So, after the ejected, we are back to the Undead. So this is Riot number 15, October of 1982. This was their final single release. They'd end up doing an album on Riot City, but this is their final single. And again, like the other one, it's more dark. This one, I think, is probably more common than the other one. I see this record all the time in record stores for, you know, $5 or whatever. But again, it's really good. This Place Is Burning, that song is so good. I love that song. And Dead Revolution is great too. This band, underrated. If you see this and you're just, you know, a UK82 head, you like Vice Squad and Blitz and all that stuff, but you pass by this, pick this up. It's awesome. And the other one too. So there's no collection of this band. Well, there is a CD collection, the Riot City years, but it's never been done on vinyl, which I would love to see someone do that on vinyl. So yeah, that's the Undead, Riot number 15, October 1982. Okay, so Riot number 16, we are back to Abrasive Wheels. And this might be their finest hour as a band, I don't know. This came out congruently to their first album. I don't know if it was before or after. It was either right before or right after their first album. 2 songs on here. Burn 'Em Down was on the album, and then the B-side, Urban Rebel, is exclusive to this and is one of my favorite Abrasive Wheels songs. It's also, I think this is the only time they use this really cool logo. So yeah, that is actually the final Abrasive Wheels single release. So with that, we'll talk about the singles collections. So there's this one here, and after they were on Riot City, Abrasive Wheels would leave and they would go to Clay Records, and Clay Records was GBH, Discharge, The Lurkers. There was a number of bands, English Dogs. They would move over there and they would change their sound to a more polished, I don't want to say pop punk in today's standing, but at the time it was more pop punk. This is the singles collection. This came out in the 90s, so this has all the Riot City stuff on it, and then it also has their stuff on Clay. And I believe the reason they moved to Clay was because their first album was produced by Mike Stone, who ran Clay Records, so I think he kind of poached them. And they really changed their sound between Burn 'Em Down and their first Clay single, which when I was a kid, I hated these. I wouldn't even play, as a matter of fact, I wouldn't even play side 2 of this when I was a kid. And I don't know, maybe it's old age, but I really changed my mind, and now I love the Clay era Abrasive Wheels. It's definitely different. It's not as spiky UK82 sounding. It's definitely more, it's more poppy, you know, but the songs are just outstanding. It's more like Generation X, I guess, would be a good comparison. It's more 77 Generation X, you know, sounding. But so that is the one option for the singles collection. This is from the 90s on Captain Away. Also, this is more recent, so this is the Riot City years. This was a CD that came out, I think, I forget what label the CD was on, but it came out in maybe early 2000s, late 90s. And this includes all of their Riot City stuff. It has all the lyrics inside. And it also has the first album. So this has everything that they did on Riot City on it. And this is pretty cool to have. It's just black vinyl. Everything fit on one, things on one record. black. I think this is the only version. I don't think they did any colored variations on this, but this is on Audio Platter Records, and this is very good quality. Like the cover and everything's very good. And I think, I could be wrong, did they do this too? Yeah, they did this Vice Squad one as well, Audio Platter. So yeah, it's the same shtick as that one. Okay, so that is Abrasive Wheels. So, moving on from Abrasive Wheels, we are back to the Expelled. So this is the second Expelled 7-inch, and this would be their final record of the 80s as well. Final record ever, actually. This was December of 1982. This has the lyrics to Government Policy, and then this is only 2 songs, Government Policy and Make It Alone. 2 great songs. And again, the blue, classic blue. I love these labels. They're so distinctive. And they can't really get damaged either because they're just directly molded right in there. Yeah, so that is the Expelled. This would be their final release. I don't think there's any represses of this. This would also, the band would continue on, I think until like 1985 they continued on, but the singer left after this record, Jo. She left after this, and there's some demos, and they did some compilation tracks on Riot Records, which have a different singer. And if you're interested in that, there is this record, the Expelled Demos and Singles, the punk rock collection. This was a CD also on Captain Oi Records. It came out in 99, late 90s. So this is just a vinyl version of that, but this includes all the singles from Riot City. This includes their demos, and it includes, I believe, I think Cider, Violent Minds, and Waiting for Tomorrow were supposed to be, here it is. I think this was supposed to be another Riot City release, but it just never was pressed. And it has the whole story in here. Pictures of all the members and all that. And this has the full story and everything. And it actually also has all their compilation appearances, which is cool. So this is cool to have. This is actually pretty tough to find these days. I think this was the first Vomito punk release. Was this one? This is tough to find. This took me a long time to track down, and this one's on red. And if you're into Vice Squad, The Expelled, I would definitely try to track this down. It'd be nice if someone repressed this, because this is a highly sought after record. This is like, I don't know, $50, $75 if you can find it. Yeah, it's a little tough to find, but well worth it. Okay, so after The Expelled, we can move on to Riot 18. That is Resistance 77. So this band is, this would be their only Riot City release. They would do more records in the 80s, and they actually would come back in the 90s, and they play to this day, and they put out a lot more music now than they ever did in the 80s. But yeah, this is an outstanding debut. Here's the labels again. Yeah, this is one of my favorite releases on the label, actually. After this release, they were actually originally called Antiheroes too, which is kind of funny because there would be an Oi band later from America, obviously, that would be called Antiheroes. But they changed their name, I think right before this came out, they changed to Resistance 77. And yeah, they kind of had this shtick of like the French Resistance cross. They used as the T in their logo, which if you're into like history and stuff, that's pretty cool they did that. So after this, they actually would go on to Riot Records, which was Dunk from Riot Squad, the band. He sang on the first couple of Riot Squad records. He would end up starting his own label, and these are the other 2 Resistance 77 records that came out in the 80s. So both absolutely outstanding. Will They Survive? 7-inch. It's a little boring in the sleeve department, as are most Riot records. The covers aren't that great, but This is a very, very rare. So here's again that Resistance cross, but this is a very rare one. And this was, I think, approaching $200 for this guy. But absolutely outstanding. I saw them one time in a garage in Philly. So shout out to anyone who knows what Fish Flat in Philadelphia was. But they played there, I want to say 2009. And yeah, like nobody knew who they were. There was like a couple of us there that actually knew who Resistance 77 was. But great band, just not very well known in America for whatever reason. Okay, so moving on to Riot 19. Riot 19 is another ejected. This was December 1982. There's only one press of this, and this was, they had a lineup change. They had a different drummer on this one than the first one. And oh, I love this one. This one has some cool graffiti. So it has this Skins 83, oi, oi, oi. Oi for England. Some skin was bored, I guess, and he wrote that on there. That's pretty cool. So shout out to you if you're out there. I got your record now. Yeah, this is a great one, and I love the aesthetic that the ejected had on these. And this aesthetic and the sound and everything would kind of be stolen by those pogo punk bands from Japan in the 90s. They would, like, every single one of them had a cover that was just like this with the same font and everything. So yeah, this was definitely a very influential band, or it turned out to be a very influential band in the 90s. But I love the Ejected and this band, and it's also kind of funny because around the time when this came out, Riot City was really starting to be kind of shit on in the press a little bit. Like Gary Bushell, he called Riot City the dustbin of punk, I think, at this time, because it was all just kind of, it was noise for the boys pretty much. And he actually discovered the Ejected and kind of put their first music out, and then by this time he started giving them bad reviews. And I mean, I don't know why. It's the same exact, this band sounded the same from when they started to when they stopped playing, and then they started playing recently, and they always have sound the same. So I don't know what he's talking about. I think maybe he was just kind of like on the anti-Riot City trip at that point. But so this was this was the first record with this lineup, and they would do the first Ejected album, also the same three-piece lineup. So that is the Ejected, December 1982. So Riot 20, this is another one-off release. This was March 1983, No Choice, Sadist Dream. They were an anarcho band from Cardiff, Wales. If you know Cardiff, there was a lot of bands that came from there. The most notable probably the Skinhead band Oppressed, and there's another punk band, Soldier Dolls, that came from there. So they had a lot of punk coming out of that city in Wales at the time. This would be the only release of this band during the 1980s. They reformed in the 2000s, and they put out some CDs and stuff, and there is a CD that is like a demos collection from the 80s. So if you can find that, I think it's on YouTube too. And this band is great, but the choice of songs on this is kind of weird. The song Cream of the Crop on here is great, and Nuclear Disaster is okay, and Sadist Dream is just kind of like a crass poem type deal. And they had a lot of really great songs, so I don't know why they chose, like, Cream of the Crop is outstanding. I think probably should have been the A-side on this. But yeah, they have a song called No Money that was like my anthem in my early 20s. Someone stapled this to the wall at some point, it looks like. But yeah. So this is a one-off, and this was their only release of the 80s, and there's no vinyl collections of the demos, which again would be really cool to have. So if anyone out there has the power, it would be cool to see this. And moving on, this band is a much more similar story. Emergency. So Emergency were from Manchester. They were actually very close to Blitz. They played a lot of shows with Blitz, and they hung out with Blitz. I think they might have even had the same practice space with Blitz and the Violators. I could be wrong on that. I think I read that though. So Emergency, there was only one press of this. This was their only release of the 80s. And this is another record which I feel like people might just pass by, because the cover is like, I don't even know what the cover is. It says Points of View, but it's like, yeah, but what am I looking at? I don't know. Maybe someone could comment. It looks like it's very zoomed in on a picture of some kind that's, I don't know, it must just be like an inside joke with the band or something, but just this is one of the best releases on the label, actually, if I'm being totally honest. I love this record. Again, the same label. So this band actually came out of the ashes of a band called The Hoax. So The Hoax did a number of records. They did an album and a couple of EPs. This is their debut 12-inch EP. This is the only record I have. So there's no guys on this record that would end up in Emergency. The Hoax pretty much was this one guy, I think the singer's band, and he had different people come and go. And I believe on their last release from 1981, they did a 7-inch in 1981, and I think the entire band would leave to become Emergency with a different singer. And if I'm right about that, but this is pretty good. This is a little more. This is from 1980, I think this came out. So this band was a little, I don't know, maybe dated sounding compared to what was happening in going forward in 81, 82, 83 time. Maybe they were a little more 77, 80 sounding, 78, 79. But so basically what happened was the three guys here left The Hoax, and they got a new singer who was a Manchester promoter, and I believe they thank him on this record, actually. They would basically draft him in as a singer and become Emergency. And Emergency had a number of demos as well that were outstanding. So it'd be really cool to see this and those demos put out as a 12-inch. There's CDs that exist of it. It's like the early years CDs or something like that. But very underrated band, outstanding. I really love this band, and I wish to see, just like No Choice, it'd be cool if someone would do that. Okay, so moving on. Riot 22, and we are back to Chaotic Discord. And yeah, just another very silly Chaotic Discord release. By this time, Simon Edwards knew that Chaotic Discord was just Vice Squad making fun of them. And although I don't think actually any of the Vice Squad guys are in the picture here. It's these two. These are the two guys, and I think these two guys are just other Vice Squad roadies. I could be wrong. But yeah, so by this time he knew, but people were buying these records. So he's like, well, hell with it. I'm just going to keep putting them out if people keep buying them. And if you're into like Chaos UK and stuff, I know it's making fun of it, but they really nailed what they were going for with this. And yeah, so it's pretty funny too. Like at this point, not everyone was still in on the joke. So like the general public had no idea and thought Chaos UK was, or Chaotic Discord was just another band. So they actually would like book shows and tours, like in Burning Britain. It says they did that like just to piss people off. So they booked like they basically made a character of a band, and a lot of people were not in on the joke. But more recently, they actually started playing shows. So I think they played their first show last year ever as a band, because it was never intended to be real. It was just a studio joke, pretty much. So that was Riot number 22, and that was May of 1983. So going forward, this is Riot number 22. The next two releases were actually, I believe, 25 and 26. And 23 and 24 came out later, but I'm going to keep them in order just to make this make sense. So I'll mention that too when we go back in time, when we bring those up. So the next release in order of the catalog numbers is Riot 23, and that is the Sex Aids. And the Sex Aids, if this all wasn't confusing enough, the Sex Aids is Chaotic Discord with the singer and bass player mix. So the bass player sings and the singer plays bass, if I am correct on this. So it was just Bambi and Igor who switched. It's still Shane and Dave. See, Shane and Dave were here. It's Dave and Shane. They still play guitar and drums, and the other two switched, and they did this 7-inch. And I like this song. Or Back on the Piss Again, I guess, is making fun of like American, when they were on Vice Squad was on an American tour, they heard some song and they were making fun of it here. Back on the Road Again, I guess. Or was that Willie Nelson? I forget. But and then they do a Motorhead cover, We Are the Road Crew, which is really cool. And yeah, this is just very, very silly, if you couldn't tell. But again, this came out of order, which is quite punk. So, that is September of 1983, Riot 23. So Riot 24 is another Mayhem. And this would be their Mayhem's final Riot City release. And this came out in October of 1983. And look at this guy carrying a keg. Yeah. This would be their final Riot City release. I don't think it's as good as the first one. This band kind of started going a metal direction, I guess you would say. It's good. I still like it, don't get me wrong, but I just like the first one more. So Mayhem there was only one original press of this, but it was reissued recently by Bomb All Records. And this was their final release on Riot City, but they would go and do one more record. They did this. It was available as a 12-inch or 7-inch. The 12-inch has an extra song on it. And this was their last release of the 80s. They did some compilation appearances too. I think I Defy is the extra song that they added here, which is also on the Maximum Rock and Roll compilation, Welcome to 1984. That's a great song. Yeah, so that is the story of Mayhem, the punk Mayhem. Okay, so next we're on Riot 25. Now this is the big one in terms of Riot City. This is the most expensive. Most of the records on Riot City are pretty affordable. The Vice Squad with the first Vice Squad with the poster insert can get a little pricey, but this record I'd say is around $100 US. This is the most rare release of, well, it's the only release of Ultraviolet, and it's the rarest and most expensive Riot City record. So this was actually, so again, we're going back in time. This was in May of 1983. Yeah, this band, they never did anything else, but the singer, Addie, would go on to sing in this band, the English Dogs, which need really no introduction. I am definitely going to do a video on probably Rot Records and maybe just English Dogs by themselves, but this was 1984. They had already put out an album in a 12-inch before this with a different singer. Wakey left and Addie joined. And this is their first record with him. This is actually the Brazilian press from 1986. Yeah, 1986. It's blue. The original was on Rot Records, and it was from 1984, and it's red. So that's the easy way. All this blue would be red on that one, which I still need to hunt that down. It's weird that I was able to find this one before the UK version. But. And then this is the first album that they did with him, Forward Into Battle, and this was also on Rot Records. This is a gatefold, which, I mean, these two records are just essential metal punk, UK82, whatever you want to call it. Just classic stuff. This was actually repressed, and this is the only one I'm going to talk about the actual 7-inch repress, because I, for some reason, have a thing with this record. I don't know why, but I just feel the need to buy every single version of this that comes out. I'm mentally ill, so just, I don't know why I do this, but this is actually the test press of the first reissue. I'm not going to go through all of these, but this one was on Static Shock Video Disease. This came out in 2015. This was the first reissue, and you can see they actually reproduced. It's just a paper label. It's not injection molded like the original, but they copied the original label, so I think that's cool. But the really cool thing about these reissues is that they come with an insert that has the lyrics and photos of the band that were previously unseen. And the crazy thing to me about this band is this is definitely Chaos UK, hardcore punk, Discharge, all that, but they have they have two skinheads in the band, which it really does not sound anything like what you would think a band with skinheads would be playing. There's no like oi oi melody. This is just pure aggression. Yeah, so normally I don't really recommend, or I'm not interested in reissues, but this one, for whatever reason, I like to get every version, and there's different. They all have, actually I'll show the insert from Bomb also. The inserts are slightly different with these reissues. So this one has a slightly different, it still has all the lyrics and all that stuff, but it has, you know, a couple of other unseen photos that aren't in the other one. So, I don't know, maybe that's why I like to collect the different versions of this, because it's just, they're just slightly different. So there's something new with each version. So yeah, that is Ultraviolent, the most rare and sought after record on Riot City. And that was Riot 25, May 1983. So Riot 26, if I had to pick one release off the label, I think this would be it. So this is the Underdogs, East of Dachau. This was July 1983. This was their only 80s release. There's only one press of this. It was reissued though in 2016. And I mentioned earlier, these guys shared members with the Expelled at one point or another. Yeah, this record again, like, is very just not very distinctive on the cover. You know, it's just kind of boring looking. But man, this record hits hard, and this is not in the vein of Ultraviolent. This is way more Abrasive Wheels. I don't want to say oi, but it's more sing-alongy, melodic. This is kind of like when I think UK82, like this is kind of right in the middle of everything. This is like, this isn't the Sex Pistols, but it's not Discharge. It's like dead center, you know, and I really like that. This record is outstanding, and again, if I had to pick, that would probably be my top record. That was their only release of the 80s. They did demos, and there is this available. This is the Punk Demos collection. This was done by Common People Records. So this has, they did, I think, 2 demo cassettes, and I believe the songs that were on this EP, I could be wrong, but I believe these were just pulled off the demo and like remixed and put out as a single. So this has all the songs that are on here. Yeah, so this has Johnny Go Home and Dead Soldier. Yeah, this has Dead Soldier on it. East of Dachau, Johnny Go Home. So I'm pretty sure this has all the same songs as that. Either way though, this is great. It has all the lyrics, pictures. It has like a little blurb about the history of the band. And the pictures here, I don't think he was on the 7-inch, but this is Macca from the Expelled. So by the time of this picture, he was in the band. Yeah, very, very, very good and underrated band. Although they've had a little more, like, people kind of know about this band. Again, it's kind of like a cult classic UK82 band. In the 2000s, the street punk band Crop Knox did a cover of the title track East of Dachau off of that. So they have a little more, they're a little more well known, I guess, or, you know. But I think these guys should be up there with Abrasive Wheels and all that stuff because they were just outstanding. So that was Riot 26, July 1983. So after that, we have the Verruchers, Die for Your Government. So this is a classic UK82 record. This was August of 1983. So this band, Verruchers, they had already done 2 records before this. They had done these 2. This is their debut, the Verruchers EP, and then this is their second record, Don't Want to Be a Victim. These were put out on Inferno Tempest Records, which I will probably just do a whole video on this label because there's not much on it. There was Drawn Votes for Europe, Criminal Class, and some other bands on there. Both of these are on Tempest Inferno. And that was these are their initial 2 records. This record actually has Gary Maloney on it, playing drums, and he would, Gary Maloney. So he would play on this first Discharge EP, or this first Verrucers EP, and then he would play on Discharge Never Again, and he was basically the Discharge drummer from Never Again onward. So he played on Hear Nothing, See Nothing, State Violence, State Control, and all their terrible metal stuff. Or, you know, if you're one of the people that pretends to like the metal Discharge, he played on most of those records as well. But so anyway, back to Verrucers. They did these 2 EPs, and they had recorded, from what I read, they recorded their debut album and this. I think, from listening to the album and this, I think all of that was recorded at the same time. But it was intended to come out on Inferno, and Inferno was just like notoriously, you know, unreliable. So Riot City ended up buying this music off of Inferno, and they ended up putting it out. So this record came out in, I think, mid-1982, and the Verrucers didn't release anything else until, this is August 1983, so they were kind of like, I think, sitting on this material for a while before it actually came out. And this record is outstanding. This, again, is like a little, it's definitely more Discharge style, but this has some definite hooks and some tunefulness to it that later Verrucers releases wouldn't have. So it's definitely that hardcore side, but you know, they had some great sing-along choruses, this and the album. There's only one original version of this, but they did a reissue of it on Visionary, who we talked about earlier, and then Havoc Records did it in the 2000s, like 2006 or something like that. I'm not sure exactly, because I've read conflicting things about if this was recorded beforehand or they recorded it to go on, or they recorded after they moved, but I think this was recorded before and Riot City just took it and put it out. Okay, so that is the Verrucers Die Free Government, July 27, August of 1983. So, 28, we are back to the Ejected. This was December of 1983. This will be the final Ejected single. Press the Button. There was supposed to be one after this, but it was actually recorded. It was called the Public Animal 7-inch, and it's on, I think there's a CD, like a best of Ejected CD, and the 3 tracks or 4 tracks, however many, from that unreleased 7-inch are on that. So it was supposed to come out on Riot City, but the label folded before they could actually put it out. And this, they are, no, they're still a 3-piece. I think the album they were a 4-piece, but they had a different, they had a different bass player on this than the previous ones. So yeah, that's the Ejected Press the Button EP. And again, the Riot City labels we all know and love. So yeah, only one press. Again, this is the last Ejected single, and there's no Ejected like singles demos collection for some reason, and I'm not sure why. There probably should be. It would be cool to have all the singles plus the unreleased single and like the Ejected demo on an LP. So again, if someone's listening out there has the power, that would be pretty cool. Okay, so Riot 29. And we are back to the Verrucers. So this came out in February of 1984. And this has a complete new lineup and sound to the previous Verrucers single we talked about and their album. This was like they took a turn straight into Discharge territory with this one. And they got a different drummer and guitar player on this one. So they got Damian Thompson, who we talked about in the No Future video briefly. Damian Thompson on guitar, Andy Baker on drums, and they came from a band. Here, before we talk about that, I'll just do a close-up of this. Andy Baker and Damian Thompson came from a band called War Wound. And War Wound were one of the earliest bands to kind of copy Discharge, I guess you would say, in like a D-beat style, I guess, which didn't exist at that time. They They were fans of Discharge and played that style. There was no D-Beat label. But this came out recently, and this is War Wound Demo. So this is Damian Thompson and Andy Baker's band before that. And I think Damian played bass on this band. Yes, Damian Thompson played bass in this band. And this is just brutal. I mean, it sounds exactly like you'd think it would. And actually, 2 of these songs that are on here would become Veruker's songs. So I think they're on Another Religion, Another War. So No Escape would become a Veruker song, and I don't remember the other one. We'll have to. Might be Brainwashed, I think. I think No Escape and Brainwashed would become Veruker's songs. And they actually do a Discharge cover on here. This is really cool. If you want to hear some really early proto-DB type stuff, this War Wound. They actually reformed with Rat from Veruker singing recently, and put out new music, but this is their original, the 1983 demos are on this record. So that is War Wound. Okay, so also, I mentioned this in the other video, and I'll just touch on it. Damian Thompson also was in Cadaverous Clan, who were on the No Future compilation, and then he would be in. He was in a bunch of bands at this time, and then he was also in. He left Veruker's. Well, we'll talk about that after this record. So, Riot 30, June 1984. This was Chaotic Discord. This was a mini album. Don't throw it all away. And it's kind of funny because, again, they like No Future kind of did the same thing. Like, as they neared the end of their run as a label, they started putting out 12-inch singles or 12-inch mini albums and singles for whatever reason. I don't know if they had a better deal on these or something. But it's just weird that both labels did that. So this is, it's another Chaotic Discord release. Very silly, making fun of the noisy style punk. This has some of my favorite. Who Killed E.T.? Like, that song is just hilarious. They also do Rock and Roll Swindle by Sex Pistols. And I think Captain Sensible played on this. And yeah, Captain Sensible plays on this record. And I think he engineered it or something. But yeah, that must have been, to be a fly on the wall in that recording studio when these guys were making this record must have been pretty silly. But yeah, so that was June of 1984. This was actually released in Japan. So there was a UK version of this, and then there was a Japanese press on VAP in 1985. And then Puke and Vomit did this a couple years ago. So this is still out there, you can find it. Okay, so Riot 31. Riot 31 is another legendary record, and this is again the Verukers, Another Religion, Another War 12-inch. This is seminal UK 82 stuff. Again, this is the same. I think there's a different bass player on this. But yeah, that's Andy Baker there and Damian Thompson. And this is Tony May, I believe his name is. And he, I don't think he actually played on this record. But he would be the bass player in Sacrilege. So right after this record, Andy and Damian and Tony would leave Verukers and they would form Sacrilege. This actually comes with this. So this is towards the end of Riot City, and they are trying to have like a grand clearance insert that came with this. And this was in a few different Riot City releases near the end here. I don't know if all the 12 inches got them, but I know for a fact this one did, and the next one we're going to talk about came with this. But this has everything they still had in stock at that time. So yeah, and they're all 50 pence a pound for an LP. Man, some of these records are worth not crazy money, but a lot more than that. So yeah, that is Another Religion, Another War. So right after this, like I said, Verukers would go their own way. Verucas would continue on. Actually, I'm wrong. Andy would stay in the band. Damien would leave. And with Andy, they did this. This is on Rot, just like the English Dog stuff. So this still had Andy on drums from Another Religion, Another War. This might be my favorite Verucas release of all time, actually. So, and Damien would start Sacrilege. So there's this record. This is Sacrilege. Sacrilege, this is like a legendary, this is a pretty expensive record too. This is on COR. This is a mini album. This is definitely English Dog's crossover metal punk style. But when they first started, they were much more of a Verucas style band. And if you want to hear that, this record, which was on Havoc, this is the demos 84 to 86. This is a double album, and this features all their demos between 84 and 86. But the first demo in 84, you can see they were very spiky, Verucas sounding. They didn't really have the crazy leads that they would have in Skulls Out into the Full Poster. This is a cool record to have. I really like this. Yeah, so, and you can see the backdrop of the band Anti-System there. So they were definitely in that vein. So these first 4 songs, really the first 8 tracks. So from November 84 to February 85, they were very, Hear Nothing, See Nothing, Discharge, Verucas sounding. And then as you move into 86, they started definitely taking on a more metal sound. You could see there's a later picture of them when they were starting to venture metal. All of it's great though. I love this. I love everything this band did, even when they went really, really metal and kind of abandoned all their punk influence later in the 80s. Yeah, just outstanding band. So that is the last Verucas release on Riot City. So with that, we'll talk about the collections. So the first one is the Verucas Punk Singles Collection. This was actually one of the first records I ever bought. And this is when I discovered that there were different versions of different songs. So I had heard a bunch of these songs on here, but I heard the album versions. And then I put this on and I was like, whoa, what? These are different versions. And that kind of started my obsession with finding singles and all that stuff. But yeah, this has seen better days. This record was partied on pretty hard by myself. But this includes all of their singles from Inferno, all their singles from Riot City, and then the Massacred Millions 12-inch. There's actually one single that's missing off of here, and it was a German single on Pogar Records. But I don't know why they didn't put that. It was from 80. I think it was the lineup with Damien Thompson and Andy Baker did that. But it was German only. It's pretty rare. It's like $100. But that's not on here for whatever reason. But everything else is, all the Riot City stuff is included on here. So this is cool to have. Captain Oi, 1996, 95, something like that. And then more recently we have this. So this was done by Let Them Eat Vinyl, who we talked about in the other video a little bit. This was from, I don't know, a couple of years ago. It's kind of billed as Another Religion, Another War, the Riot City years, but this is, this includes all the Riot City releases, and it also includes the full album. So, it's kind of lazy if you ask me, because it really only has the stuff that was on Another Religion, Another War. Has the 2 pictures from the back of Another Religion, Another War, and only the lyrics for that. But it has the entire album. So it's cool to have everything on one. It's on red vinyl. Again, if you're into that type of thing. This label is hit or miss for me. I think this is one of their more lazy releases. They do some that are much better in terms of material that is included. Because, I mean, all the other records had the lyrics on them, so they could have at least compiled all the lyrics from everything on here. But this is cool to have, I guess. Just throw it on. Okay, so now we are moving into the last Riot City release. So this is the 12-inch Chaos UK, the singles. So this includes the Burning Britain and Loud, Political, and Uncompromising 7-inch singles are included on here. And it also has the song that was on Riotous Assembly. So That's what this record was supposed to be. And again, you can see that. You can see that weird lamination is starting to come loose here. Like, that's how all of the Riot City 12 inches were. They were like this, and they look great when they're brand new. But this just drives me nuts. But yeah, anyway, so this has the first 7-inch on one side, and then it has the second 7-inch and Senseless Conflict, which is the song that was on Riot's Assembly. But this actually is a mispress. I believe they all are like this, but they have the song Senseless Conflict is the last song on both sides, so it has that song twice, which was just a mistake. But yeah, this also comes with that same Riot City Grand Clearance insert. And this is the last Riot City release, and it's also the last Chaos UK release on the label. So, as far as Chaos UK goes, this is another Let Them Eat vinyl release, and this has everything from Riot City. Has everything from Riot City, including their first album. Just so this is basically the same idea as the Verukers one, but it also includes their first demo on here, which is pretty cool. I think this is the only place you can find their demo on vinyl. The 3 songs, Maggie, Hate, Police Protection. But this, again, is kind of a lazy one in my opinion, because the inside is just the album. So when we talk about the albums, this is that's all it is. So it's just weird. I don't know why they did that. They could have found, there's tons of other pictures of them. They could have just put the lyrics, made like a history or something, but instead they just copied that, and it's in, I don't know. I guess they probably wanted to do this for all intents and purposes. It is the album with bonus tracks, but maybe they figured this is definitely more like enticing cover than this is and was, which is definitely true. But it's just, I think it's kind of lazy, if you ask me. It's on all the Let Them Eat vinyl stuff is always uncolored, and this is my least favorite clear. Like, good luck seeing if there's a scratch on that. Okay, so that wraps up the entire Riot City singles collection. With that, before we end, we'll talk about, like we did in the No Future, we'll talk about these singles collections. So these were Captain Oi. In the early 90s these came out, and it's the same exact thing that they did with No Future. They did 2 double disc sets. And this is basically, it's not a complete, 100% complete collection, but it's most of the singles that we just talked about on 4 discs over 2 volumes. It's got a little history here with Simon Edwards talking about how he formed the label and all that, and then it has a full listing of all the singles on there. This first one has, I think, most of the A-sides, and then the second volume has more B-sides. And then it has, this one actually has a little history of each band in it, so that's kind of cool. Yeah. These I highly recommend to people who are just maybe just starting along this journey. These are great because you kind of get a little bit of, there's at least every release. Every single release is at least represented here. But there's a couple songs missing. And there is this, which kind of goes along with these two, and this was done by Get Back Records out of Italy. And this was a complimentary collection of singles, or of single tracks, and this has some of the songs that are missing off of these two. But it also has some of the songs that are on here, so it's, and there is, I forgot to mention this in the No Future one, there's a version of this for the No Future singles, also from Get Back, so it's kind of like, between the 3 of them, you get like 90% of the songs that were on the Riot City singles. So with that being said, I guess we'll just end there, and this video is going to be a long one. I can already tell these two, but they had a little more releases than No Future did. So, all right, that wraps up this video, and we'll see you when we do part 2 for the Riot City LPs, compilations, and just rarities, I guess you could say. All right, so see you next time.